Hi everybody, this is Piteio from Veil of the Ages. In this third video we will see what's gonna happen now that Kamorko has finally made it into the arena. So we studied here, we've done some shooting, some charging, some combat. We saw the rules for moving, so for advancing and for marching, and now we are finally ready to get into the arena with our orc here and our elf down here, and to see whether the orc can finally win his first game into the arena. Now, once again, we have the two gladiators, the two warriors that are 24 inches away. We don't have this measurer that we had here, so the way to know the distance is to place the cursor, press tab on your keyboard, and then measure the distance to the opponent, which is 24 inches in this case. Now, as you see here, instead of fighting this scenario over a single line, we have a circular arena, which means that our gladiators, our fighters, will be able to move left and right and to interact with the terrain. They don't have to go into a straight line. So, how are we going to do this? Well, the same rules apply, but you can also use this new, you are expected to also use this new card for terrain. This is telling you essentially how to set up the battlefield, which I have already done for you, how to use line of sight, meaning that the target of your shooting or the target of your charging must be in the 45 degrees lines from the front of your miniature. Imagine that Kamorko is this green square at the bottom left. Kamorko can only see what's inside 45-degree angles in the front and cannot see things like the grey square at the bottom right, because it's outside the 45 degrees line of sight, or cannot see the grey square at the top, because that one is hiding behind a piece of terrain which is like an obstruction, a wall. Okay? So how do these pieces of terrain work? You have a second card here that tells you how an obstruction blocks the line of sight. Same thing with an elevation, but you can climb onto an elevation, you cannot go through a wall. And then there is a third piece of terrain, which is cover, which gives some protection to the warriors who are inside this piece of terrain when you try and shoot at them, because they can duck and use the terrain feature to get some protection. Okay? But other than that, the basic mechanism is the same that you have already seen for scenario number 4. You first check whether you are engaged in combat or not. If you're not engaged, maybe you can declare a charge. If you don't declare a charge, you can see whether you do moving in terms of holding or advancing, which allows you to shoot, or marching faster. So, let's start. Let's see what Kamorko can do. And for this scenario, I have also prepared another small tool. You see here the 45 degrees line for the line of sight of the orc. So an orc cannot see an enemy that's in here. In theory, the elf is within this 45-degree line of sight, but we have a piece of terrain which is an elevation which blocks the line of sight. So this line between the two is interrupted by the terrain, and so I cannot charge. In any case, as we've seen in the previous scenario, we are too far away for charging anyway. This is what would happen if we rolled the 12 on the 2 dice for charging. So it's truly too far away. This means, however, that I can take the orc and I can advance within this circle here, or I can march up to this larger line here. And I am thinking that I will copy, paste with Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V the orc, and I will position it somewhere on this elevation, because as we said, you can go on top of an elevation instead of but you cannot go through a wall. Now, as you see, I am inside this big 8 inches march movement. So this is a good movement, and I think that I can stop here. I think it's also relatively cinematic to have the orc climb onto the hill and say, you know, I am ready, let's face each other, right? Good. Now it's the elf's turn, and as we've seen before, we can activate the line of sight and see what it is that the elf can do. So the elf has an advanced movement of 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. I can go through here with my advanced movement, but I can also march up to 10. I could, in theory, charge the orc if I roll a 12, because the orc is precisely inside of the 12 charging distance, but that would probably not be a very wise choice. Instead, what I think I will do is take this elf and place the elf somewhere around here. So am I still within my advance range? Yes, it seems like I am. So I can place myself somewhere like here. Okay. I can use the M key to magnify the view and check that I'm doing the moment properly, or I can use the mouse wheel to scroll, and I can position myself inside the 5 inches movement area. Okay? So this will be what my elf is seeing. As you can see here, the orc is in the is on this elevation here. That's the orc, and this will be the elf. This is a legal advanced movement because I've stayed within my 5 inches, and this is interesting because it means that the orc is still within my charge range for the next turn. So I think I will complete my advanced movement here. Now, if you remember, we have said that when you advance, you can shoot with a modifier. Okay? Now, what is this modifier that we need to apply? Well, we advance maximum 5 inches, and we now have to check whether the opponent is within 12 or beyond 12 inches from me. So I can use the meter and measure 12 inches and see that this is where the 12 inches stop, right here. So that means that I am not going to be able to shoot without a modifier. By the way, when you look at the line of sight tool, you also have this information which is now buried in the field, 3+, 4+. This means that up to the 3+, you are shooting with no penalty for long distance, and from the 4+, you're shooting with a penalty. And as you see, the orc is past the 4+. Okay, so that means that my elf normally, as you see towards the middle of the card, would shoot with green, orange and blue, but now since I advanced of maximum 5 and I am beyond 12 inches, I will use orange, orange and blue. So let's take orange, copy it here, paste it for the second, and also take a blue one. Let's take the dice all together and see if my elf can shoot this orc here. Roll. Nope, didn't work. As you might remember, an elf has 2 shots, so I can try again. Also not. So this shooting attempt didn't really go well. All right, no big deal. It's gonna give the orc another turn to see whether we'll manage to destroy the elf. So this is what the orc is seeing right now. There is an unobstructed line of sight towards the elf, but are we within charge range? So I can activate the line of sight, and I would see here that the elf is right inside this last line for 12. So if I roll a double 6, it means that I will be able to shoot the elf. Okay? So that I would be able to charge the elf. Sorry. Let's get some tea. to get our ideas straight. Now, what am I going to do? I could charge, but we said that it requires too high of a number. I could advance through here and then shoot, or I can march up to here in this larger section. And I am thinking that I can probably advance by 4 and still be able to shoot with my crossbow. I should be able to do that, but in this approach, that means that I could make it easier for myself to charge in the next turn. So I take the orc, I copy it, and I place it where I want to be at the end of my advance movement, which is, yeah, I should say, I like this position. I'm going to place myself here. As you see, I am inside the big circle. You can use the shadow as a reference. So that means that this is my advance movement. Okay? So I can deactivate the previous line of sight, and this is what I see now. And as you see now, the elf is in my short range. You see, 4+, 5+. This will be the short range of my long range of my crossbow. This is the short range. So I can now shoot. How does the shooting work in this circumstance? Well, as you see here, I have advanced maximum 4 inches and my opponent is within 15. That's what we just checked with the numbers, but we can do that again. We are 11 inches away. And so that means that I can hit and kill my opponent if I roll a success on both the red and the green die. So let's take red, let's take green, and let's see whether our orc manages to kill the elf. One shot only. Come on. Nope, didn't work. Okay, so that means that it's the elf's turn again. Now, what is the elf going to do? Well, what are the options? So the elf could charge. It only needs a 7 to charge. It could stay in position and shoot and then get charged by the orc next turn. It can advance through here and can march up to here. This is interesting. Maybe I want to march up to there. That means that I won't be shooting, but I will be in a terrain that gives me some protection against the enemy's shooting. Plus, it looks cool, I think, to just be inside of this terrain. Let's see how that looks. Just at the beginning of the field, right? Yep, that'll be where I am now. So the elf is partially hiding inside this field, and we get some protection from the orcs shooting. Now, if you remember, we've said that once you march, like we've done now, you don't get a chance to shoot. So it's directly the end of turn, and we go to the orcs next turn. What can the orc do now? Well, the orc has this line of sight. So that means that the elf is inside the line of sight of the orc. By the way, if the elf had movement to go up to here, this means that the orc would have not seen the elf, and it would not have been able to charge the elf at the beginning of its turn. Okay? But this is the movement that the elf had available. The orc can see the elf, and this is important because, as this card tells you below the graph, in order to declare a charge or shoot, a warrior must have the target's base at least partially within its own line of sight. So what I'm saying is that if the elf was here, the base of the elf would be outside of the line of sight of the orc, and the orc could not have charged. But this is the situation that we have at hand. That means that the elf is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches away from the orc, and that means that I can charge the elf by rolling at least a 4 on 2 dice. So let me take these 2 dice and let me see if I manage to roll at least a 4. Come on. Let me dream. It's a 7. So as you remember, this means movement 4 plus 7 equals 11. 11 is greater than the distance between the two of us, which is currently 8. And so this means that the charge is successful. I can take my orc and place it in contact with the elf inside the field. So as you see here, going inside of the field hasn't really given me much advantage as an elf, because the orc didn't shoot at me anyway, and so there was a bit, relatively pointless to do that. It is okay to do pointless things when you are learning the game. Don't sweat it. You are learning how to apply the rules. Okay? Even when you are playing against yourself, that's a good way to learn how this works. So now we simply apply the rules from combat. From now on, this is the same thing as the previous scenario that we played and the one before. We just use the terrain to obscure the line of sight. We haven't used them too much to our advantage, but it's a good learning procedure. So, who attacks first? It is written on the cards in the fighting block. The orc attacks last, the elf attacks first. The elf needs green and orange. Needs to roll a successful symbol on both the green and the orange. Let's roll, let's see. Nope, didn't work. So these elves are really not doing their job at guarding the arena, I would say. Let's see if the orc is motivated enough to go on this winning streak. We have yellow, green and blue to kill the elf, and we can attack twice because the orc, as you see, has 2 weapons. So green, yellow and blue. So we have a green, we have a blue, we need a yellow die, Control C, Control V, or Command, depending on the operating system. So let's go with the first attack. Let's see what happens. Come on, go. No, it's a fail because we don't get the symbol here. Second chance, come on. Also not. As you see, the yellow die is the harder one because it has fewer success symbols than the other dice. Okay? This is different. So that means that the elf gets another chance to defend the arena by killing the intruder. We've seen before that we need, what did we say we need? We need a green and orange, right? One attack, green and orange. So let's copy this here, paste it there. These are the dice for the orc, and these are the dice for the elf. Let's roll these. Come on. Finally, at the very end of this adventure, the Elven Guard managed to block the intruder and to save the arena from being overflooded with crazy, excited, fight-frenzied orcs. So, well done to the elf for having managed to defend the arena, and well done to you for having stuck with us through this whole tutorial. We will have more tutorials in the future. We've just seen scenario number 5, but this is where the fun begins. You are not bound to only play with the orc and the elf, but you can also use other amazing characters and warriors from the 9th age, and you are also not expected to only play them in this simplified form. You can play them in the advanced version, where every warrior has a series of specific statistics, profiles and special abilities. But this is for another videos. For the moment being, thank you for having played with us.